And joining me now is Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. Congressman Clyburn, welcome back to the Saturday Show. Why did you feel it was important for you to encourage the president to make the decision that he did, and that was to pardon his son, Hunter?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It is the season for us to think about these sort of things. And I was with the president 2 Fridays ago. I said to him that we were about to embark upon the season of thankfulness, forgiveness, that we are in a period of time that no one thought we would be in, that the circumstances surrounding all of government and those who participate in it is different. And then I said to him that you're a dad, and you have a son that is targeted, and everybody knows that. You have an obligation to protect your son from what could become an eventuality if all of these people were to keep their promises, to fulfill their threats, to go after people. So I asked him to really consider it. He was a bit reticent. He was. But I was a little bit insistent. As a father myself, I believe we are obligated, especially, I believe in love, I believe in tough love. But there's one thing to have tough love. It's something else to have vengeance thrown at you, have persecution. One thing to prosecute is something else to persecute.
Congressman Clyburn, let me get you to clear something up, because I'm a little confused. On Tuesday, you were asked on CNN whether you thought President Biden should pardon Donald Trump. I'm just going to ask you the question directly. Do you think that President Biden should pardon Donald Trump? And if so, why?
Yes, I do think so. And I think he should pardon all of those people that have been accused and have been targeted, so that we can clean the slate. We can have an air of possibilities for the future. If we keep digging at things of the past, I'm not too sure the country will not lose its way. Now, remember, President Trump has been indicted, has been convicted on state crime. Also, please remember that the United States Supreme Court has given him immunity. And so I'm asking people who question my thought on this to explain to me how he would be any more insulated by this pardon than he seems to already be by the United States Supreme Court with its immunity.
Well, Congressman, then that would beg the question, why even bother to give him a pardon if he already has immunity from the Supreme Court?
Because I think Joe Biden will be demonstrating what he's always demonstrated to me, that he loves this country more than anything else other than maybe his family. He wants to see this country going forward. He doesn't want to see us keep digging into the past, but moving forward. So I think it would give a tremendous opportunity for him to demonstrate that kind of concern for the future of the country.
Well, Congressman Clyburn, this might be the one and only time we will ever disagree on a subject. Let me get your response to something that Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say. I'm not going to play the clip. I'm just going to tell you that the Leader Jeffries said that the president should focus on pardoning nonviolent offenders, not members of Congress. Do you anticipate President Biden making a bigger announcement of more pardons, more clemency being granted to average citizens who are caught up in the criminal justice system, who are worthy of a pardon or clemency from the president?
Yes, I do. I think he is going to broaden this concern. And, you can prioritize nonviolent offenders, but I think that a lot of former Congress people have been accused of things that were nonviolent. And so if you are going to focus on nonviolent offenders, that would include Congress people. I won't call in the names, but in one or two instances, these things were just victimless. And people do make mistakes, and we do forgive, and we do allow second chance. Just because you get elected to Congress doesn't mean you give up your right to a second chance. And so I think that he should take a look at all of these cases and make some evaluations, have his staff to vet them, and come back with some recommendations. I have asked that a few people like Alcee Hastings, who is now dead and gone, but he served in Congress for 20 some odd years after having been convicted of a crime. So the people forgave him, elected him to represent them. So I'm just asking the president to clean his record posthumously.
Congressman, let me get you on one more thing before we have to go. The president is due to give a major economic speech on Tuesday. The stated goal is to prevent Donald Trump from taking credit for President Biden's successes after Trump takes the oath of office on January 20th. What do you expect him to tout in that speech?
Well, I hope he will be very comprehensive with it and follow up the speech with a lot of facts and figures, get it out here, get it all out in writing. People may forget what you say. So let's not just give the speech, but I hope the staff will follow up. I've been doing videos all week about what we've done with those bills that we passed. The Inflation Reduction Act. Next, starting in January, people who are on Medicare are going to have a cap on their out-of-pocket expenses at $2,000 a year. That's going to happen. But it happened because of Joe Biden. Right now, seniors have their insulin capped at $35 a month. That's going to happen. It's not, and we want people to know, thanks to Joe Biden, it happened. All of these roads and bridges and water and sewage that's being developed out here came because of that $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that we got from Joe Biden after 4 years of Donald Trump promising infrastructure and now spending one dime on it. So only about 35–40% of all that money has gone out of the door. And so the other 65%, Trump's going to take credit for. Joe Biden needs to let people know, yes, it's going to happen thanks to Joe Biden. And so go through all these veterans who are now getting benefits from the PAC Act. So I think that what we've seen in the past is that credit being assigned to the wrong people. Joe Biden has never gotten the credit he is due. We need to make sure we put it all in writing before he goes out the door.
He's going to put it in writing, and he's going to tell the American people in a major speech on Tuesday. Congressman James Clyburn of the great state of South Carolina, as always, thank you very much for coming to the Saturday Show.